Hey, welcome back to episode 6 of Real Life. This week I covered everything in regards to goal setting and a little bit of a different mindset that I have around the importance of goal setting and how I'm incorporating it into my day-to-day life nowadays. It's a little bit of a long one, but it's a great conversation and I enjoyed it a lot, and I hope you guys enjoy it too. Like I've said in the last few episodes, the number one thing you guys could do right now to help me and support this podcast is by sharing it with a friend. Share it with someone who you think might enjoy it. But I won't keep you for any longer. Here is episode 5 of Real Life. Welcome back to episode 6 of Real Life. It's good to be back. It's good to be back here on Sunday afternoon. Actually, a beautiful Sunday afternoon here in Melbourne, Australia today. It was the first day this week that I've been able to get out and exercise outside, because for the entirety of this week it has been so stormy and windy that I would actually consider it dangerous to be out on a bike, if I'm honest, which has made me just miss running so much, because I would run in crappy weather. I don't mind running in crappy weather. I don't mind it at all. There's nothing wrong with running in crappy weather. You're just going to get a little bit wet, and as long as you rug up, you'll be fine. But riding in crappy weather, even riding in like a little bit of wind, is just horrible. And then riding in rain, there is nothing more demoralizing than riding in rain. How have all you been this week? How's everyone been? What's everyone been up to this week? I hope you had an enjoyable week wherever you are around the world, wherever you're watching this. The audience is growing here on the podcast. We've got a lot of people in France. We've got about 10% of our audience in France, which is unreal. I think that's really, really cool. Obviously, a lot of Australians. We've got a lot of Americans as well. So hello to all the Americans listening now. It's cool to see you guys enjoying the podcast, and it's growing with every episode. So, usually the way things go whenever you start something new, everyone sort of watches the first one out of curiosity. It's kind of like, oh, we'll see what he does here. We're not really sure. Everyone it's a little bit of morbid curiosity sometimes as well. Like, you'll definitely get more views from the people who don't like you on the first episode of something, because they all sort of, morbid curiosity. They want to see you not do something well. So, and usually when you do something for the first time, it's not going to turn out too well. But after that, it tends to drop into a little bit of a lull. You keep the people that are actually interested, and then you build slowly. But we've been pretty good. Obviously, the first episode we barely got 100 views on the first episode, and we've just consistently grown over the last 6 episodes, which is awesome. It's crazy to think that I started this 6 weeks ago. It's almost 2 months, and we're almost up to episode 10. I actually this week recorded my first guest episode. So I recorded with Kyle Meshner, or at Meshner on Instagram. So that's going to be episode 11. Hopefully the restrictions are easing here in Melbourne on the 11th of this month. So just for context, today's the 3rd of May, Sunday the 3rd of May. And hopefully restrictions are easing to level 2 restrictions, which means that Liam and I would be able to record the podcast in person, which I would personally prefer. Like, if I'm able to record with someone who's from Melbourne, I'm going to try and record it in person. Obviously, I don't want to stick to just people in person, because that restricts me to the type of guest I can have, because it has to be someone from Melbourne or someone who's traveling to Melbourne. Whereas I would love to do international guests, which is why I got Kyle on. But I think it's cool that if I have the opportunity to, I will record in person. So yeah, I'm going to have Liam on, which will be episode 12. I'm going to continue doing one-on-one episodes, just because I've been surprised by how much I'm enjoying this, and the response has been way better than I actually expected. I was genuinely expecting, obviously there would be listeners who enjoy my work on Instagram or enjoy my YouTube stuff, and they just want to have another place, just, more content essentially is what the podcast would have been. But I really didn't expect a lot of people to say that this is, they don't really watch my YouTube content, but they now listen to the podcast, which I think is really, really cool. And the messages I'm getting from people, the overall response has just been awesome. So I really, really do appreciate it. Like I said, and I've said every episode, the number one thing you can do to help me out is just share the podcast around. Share it with, your friends, share it with family, share it with a partner, a loved one, someone you think it would be useful for, because that genuinely is the number one thing you can do to help me out, is just share the podcast with people you think would appreciate it as much as you can, because word of mouth is, if any of you are in the creative industry, word of mouth is the number one source of, or by far one of the biggest sources of all my clients and whatnot. I had and one of the topics that I wanted to talk about this week actually is, I have had a very strange week, a very, very strange week. I've had just a few really big pivotal moments that have sort of really opened my eyes to just a couple of things that I really didn't consider as all that important before. One of the more jovial things that's happened this week is I accidentally deleted an entire video. So the video that you guys got on Wednesday was actually supposed to be this week's video, and last week's video I accidentally deleted. So my storage solution at the moment for all my footage, for the countless terabytes of footage I've got, is 2 hard drives for every 1 hard drive. So I just back everything up onto a second drive, which is just stupid. Everything is like, right now on my desk I've got six hard drives sitting right in front of me right now. I've got a few more over on the desk on the shelf behind me. Like, it's just dumb. And then I've got a box full of all the backups. So it's just a stupid solution. And one of the workarounds for that is, because I've got so many hard drives, sometimes I'm working on a project and importing a project at the same time. So I have an active shoots folder on my desktop of my computer that I use as kind of like a mediary when I can't access the hard drive that I need to access at a certain time. And because of that, I started editing this project from that folder rather than being patient and uploading it onto a hard drive. And then when it came to the time to clear that space for something else, I double checked but didn't realize that I hadn't completed the upload, and I ended up deleting all the A-roll footage and all the voiceover for that project. And then because I didn't need the script anymore, I deleted the entire script as well. But that was my own fault again, because I don't keep, I clear my notes when I'm done with a video idea. And so I ended up pretty much deleting an entire video. That video will never see the light of day. That idea will never see the light of day. I've finished scripting and doing the voiceover and doing the A-roll for a new version of that video, but because obviously, the script was done and recorded, and now I don't have any trace of that old script. So this is going to be a completely different iteration of that same idea. But it's just so funny that that happened. So one of the solutions that I've come to this week is I've finally, and some of you filmmakers will be very proud of me listening right now, I've finally joined the professional world of storage solutions, and I've got myself a Lacey 6 big 24 terabyte RAID system. So that should be coming soon, and all my active stuff is going to go on there. All my non-active is going to go on a hard drive, like a Lacey or something, and then a really shitty, really crappy, cheap, high volume hard drive that's literally, I'm going to put the footage on there as a backup. It's going to go into a box in my wardrobe or somewhere else other than this room, and that's going to be there and never used and occasionally plugged in to make sure it's still running. So I'm trying to join the adult world as far as being professional with the way I store my footage and spending money to have that peace of mind, because obviously it's a big investment. Any of you filmmakers will know how much storage solutions cost, which is unfortunately oftentimes what leads to people losing massive amounts of footage, is purely the fact that they can't afford to spend thousands of dollars for tens of terabytes of storage solutions. So they end up just, never thinking that it'll happen to them. And then all of a sudden they've got 4, 8, 12 terabytes of footage all on their own hard drive with no backups, and poof, touch wood, make sure that doesn't happen. Touch wood, make sure that doesn't happen. But yeah, unfortunately that happens to a lot of people. And then the other thing I started doing this week again, and I've done this in the past, and I talked about this in another video last year, but the way I did it last year, I just don't think it worked for my brain and how it works, is I started journaling again. I started journaling more, and I started incorporating that into my daily routine, and I just approached it with a far better focus on structure, but also a lack of structure. I think the issue that I had last time with journaling was it was just a to-do list. That's all it really was. It was just a way of writing down my to-do list. And I think there is a benefit to handwriting your to-do list, but I think a whiteboard is like the good place for that. I don't think your journal is a place for your to-do list. Because inevitably with a to-do list, oftentimes, there's ways that you can get around that. There's a lot of people that talk about minimum of 3 activities, maximum of 5, and make sure you're not overwhelming yourself. But the reality of a lot of creative careers is you're always juggling at least 5 to 10 different things all at once. And that doesn't even include all of the smaller, less important things like your own personal projects and whatnot. So the reality of having only, 3 or 5 goals for the day is just not capable for us. So I think the issue that I faced was my to-do list stressed me out. So the journaling, the process that was supposed to declutter my mind, would end up just cluttering my mind. And I admittedly, I did enjoy the process of, ticking things off that list and getting things done and going through that process. I did enjoy that, but I think that you need to have a structure with your to-do list that works with the way that your brain works, but also acts as a bit of a relaxing thing, a way to declutter, a way to get things out of your head and onto paper. Because I heard a brilliant thing recently. Someone described Struthless is an Australian creator. Decluttering your mind is so important for getting things done, because you've got to treat your brain the same way you would treat a hard drive. The exact same way you would treat one of these is once they start to get full, they start to slow down. And once they slow down, then it's really difficult for them to get up and running again. And it's the same thing with your brain. Once your brain starts to fill up, and it fills up with dumb stuff, like unimportant stuff, once it starts to fill up, it's difficult for it to, produce anything of high quality. It's difficult for you to get motivated to do the things you need to do because your brain's so occupied with these tasks and thoughts and things going on inside its head that doesn't really matter. And the last one that I've included is goal setting. I think that I'm going to touch on this. I'm going to talk about this for an entire chunk of this podcast, goal setting in general, because I've always been a believer in, goal setting without action is delusion. I've always been a strong believer in that. I've always, oh my God, I got an itchy nose. I've always been a strong believer in that and against the idea of manifestation. Oh my God. Sorry guys, my nose is really itchy. I've always been a strong believer that manifestation without action is delusion. But I want to talk about this today because it's kind of been a massive revelation for me this week. So those were the 3 things that I really wanted to incorporate back into my journaling. And I think I'll make an entire video about journaling in general and how I structure it and whatnot, because I think a lot of the videos online currently are kind of like, you're going to structure it exactly like this and spend hours making the page look pretty and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, none of that matters. Literally none of that matters. There is pages on pages and pages of my journal that I just threw the to-do list and the goal setting part of it out of it because my brain was just full and I just decided I just need to write. And then it ends up being scribbles. Honestly, some of my pages of my journal look pretty close to Joaquin Phoenix's notepad in The Joker. Some of those pages, if someone opened them up, would wholeheartedly think I am completely insane. But that's how it works some days. Like the idea that you can realistically sit down with your color pack of pencils and texters and create a beautiful page every single day and create this stringent structure around your stringent structure around your journaling is just, it's not possible. It's bullshit. It's never going to happen. So what I've done is I've got my 3 main aspects that I've wanted to include in my journaling. It's the goal setting. The goal setting is the first thing I do every single day. And I think this was what got me so amped to journal again and so amped to get back into it, is because the first thing I do is write down my goals, my immediate goals. So like today, and then also my long-term goals. So literally writing down, I'm not going to go into them today because a few of them are a bit personal. Maybe I'll make a whole video about it eventually in the future. But, if you've got goals of getting to 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, write that down every single day. If you've got a goal to buy a house one day, write that down every single day. If you've got a monetary goal, write that down every single day. Because what that does is, and I will get into this, is it gives your brain a direction. It gives your brain something to focus on. And it makes sure that you're recognizing that every single day. Because your brain recognizes patterns. That's what it does. It's designed to recognize patterns. So by writing that down every day, it gives your brain something to focus on, something to direct it. It's like, and I'll get into this, but the second thing is my to-do list. So my daily to-do list, and underneath each item that I need to do, I write down why I need to do it, or why it's important to me is probably a better terminology for that. And that has been huge for me, just because I've really noticed how much bullshit I'm spending my time on, and how many important tasks are being taken over by tasks that I think are important. Tasks that, they're taking me all day when I don't need to spend all day on them. And then the last part is my declutter section. And this is literally half the page is declutter. So underneath a certain line, it's just write down everything that's on my mind. If that's a video script, write it down. If those are YouTube ideas, write it down. If that's random thoughts, write it down. If it's me feeling a little sorry for myself and writing a little letter to myself, write it down. Whatever it is, write it down in this little section. And like I said, oftentimes that bottom section becomes dominant. It becomes the entire page. But that's what I'm enjoying so much about getting back into journaling, is just how relaxing it is to get everything out of my head and onto paper. Because once it's on paper, it's tangible. Those things are real. They're in your face. They're just right there in front of you, and you can reorganize them and figure them out and actually look at them and go, oh, that thing that's really distracting me and really stressing me out. Like yesterday, I got caught up to date on my taxes. That has been something that has stressed me out to no end for the last few months, because there's the idea in your head, like you make money and then you've got your taxes to do. And when I say getting caught up to date with my taxes, all my BAS were overdue for this financial year. If any of you run your own business, you know what a BAS is. They can be pretty stressful. So that has been stressing me out. I've been putting it off. It's something I didn't want to do. And yesterday, or all of this week, I had it in my to-do list that I needed to do it, because it started out as a thought that got written down in my declutter section. So I wrote it in my declutter section. I saw it on paper and I was like, Tom, that's going to take you, yeah, sure, it's going to cost you some money, and that's going to be uncomfortable parting ways with that money, especially right now. But that's going to take you half an hour, dude. It's going to take you half an hour, and you're going to be able to get it done, and then it's gone, and it's over, and you don't need to worry about it anymore. So what happened yesterday is I got my taxes done. I got up to date with all my BAS for this financial year. Everything is up to date. I'm ready to go and see my accountant in June, and we're good to go. And that is such a stress relief, but I wouldn't have figured that out, or I wouldn't have gotten as close to that if I didn't have that declutter section there to sort of tell me, to have an area to put this out on paper, have it on the page, and realize that, hey, that's actually not that intimidating. That's a task that I could crank out in half an hour, get it done, get it finished, and not stress about it anymore. So if I can encourage all of you to do one thing, it's the most important thing out of all of this, I think, is decluttering your mind and goal setting. Having your goals written down every single day has been massive for me this week, because it comes back to, as some of you know, I really haven't in the past. I like goal setting. I do enjoy goal setting, and I think it's a great idea. I think it is a fantastic idea for all of you to, even if it's not strict goals, even if it's just sitting down with a piece of paper, writing down everything that you like doing, and then reverse engineering how you could get to doing any of those things as a career. I think everyone, and I've seen the analytics for this audience, there are the exception. There's a few of you that are older. I think those older people in the demographic are actually just family members. My cousin, I have a big family, so cousins, uncles, anyone who's listening to this. I know Mark listens to this, so hey Mark, my older brother, I know he listens to this. I know a few of my uncles listen to this, so family, how you doing? I hope you're enjoying the podcast. So I think they take up the demographic that are older, but for most of you, the majority of this audience is 16 to 25. So all of you could really benefit if you aren't already doing something that you actually enjoy doing by sitting down, especially right now. Sit down and just write down everything that you enjoy doing, everything you're good at, because the world, can you imagine how amazing the world would be if everyone did what they're talented at, if everyone pursued what they were gifted? Because we all have that one thing. We all have that one thing that we're talented at. We all have that one thing that we've always known that we're pretty good at, or just interests us. The one thing that you can spend an entire day doing and it's effortless. So I think goal setting is really, really important, but I've always neglected it because I was like, well, God, like what good is goal setting if you're not taking action? What good is goal setting if you're not working hard? So I always just opted for the work hard mentality of it. But what I didn't think about until recently is I've been reading, finally, Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life. And he has a chapter. It's essentially 12 chapters, but they're very long chapters. 12 rules, essentially. And rule number 4 is compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not who someone else is today. It's essentially don't compare your middle to someone else's. No, don't compare your beginning to someone else's middle in a more nicely put way. And in that, he talks about the idea that, and this is certainly not his idea, but he talks about the idea that your brain is directionless. Your brain is only concerned with keeping you alive. And part of that means that your brain is only going to repeat actions that it is already done, that it already knows is safe, that it already knows is going to keep you healthy. It's why we're so habitual. It's why when you, for example, let's bring it back to something that I'm sure all of you experienced. Have you ever, gone to a particular coffee shop and you've bought the coffee there one day and then you go back the next day and then you go back the next day and all of a sudden that coffee from that coffee shop at the certain time in the morning is really important to your day. That becomes a really important thing and it's hard to break that habit. For me, it became like smoothies for a while and it does now, but I make them myself. But there used to be this place that I would go to every single day after my workout. And I felt like my day was ruined if I couldn't do that. Like if I accidentally, if I had to work in the morning and had to work out late and then it was closed, it became so habitual for me. And that's because your brain recognizes those patterns and goes after things that it knows is safe because its only concern is keeping you alive. That's its only concern. It doesn't recognize your goals. It doesn't know that you're trying to get better. It doesn't know any of that. It just knows what you have done and what those things are and how those things are keeping you alive. So because of that, it came up with the idea that, without you, what you aim at is what you see. What you aim at is what you see. And this comes into interesting territory here. I know a lot of you are probably thinking, Tom, he's going to get into manifestation. But I genuinely am telling you right now, the manifestation thing is, I just don't believe in it. I don't believe the truth and all that sort of stuff. I don't believe in it. But what I do believe in is the fact that without direction, without a goal, your brain is not going to see those things. It's not going to see the opportunities that might present itself that could lead to your goal. It's simply going to repeat actions. And that's terrifying. It is terrifying to think that without direction, your brain is just going to repeat actions that it knows is safe without you even recognizing it. So there's no, realistically and scientifically, if you don't give yourself a direction, if you don't give yourself a goal, and if you don't remind yourself of that goal every single day, then what you don't aim for, you will not see, is essentially what I'm trying to say. And something that has been such an eye-opening thing for me to read about recently is because it's so true. It's like do you remember that video that went viral on Facebook? It's like the basketball team and they're passing the ball and it asks you to count how many times it's passed the ball and you count it and it's like, oh, I got like 15, and you're stoked about the answer. And then it goes, but did you see the gorilla? And then you watch the video again and no one saw the gorilla. This gorilla that walks, and it's not like hidden. It's very, very obvious. It is literally that. And it's the same thing as when you, for example, you think about a new car, like you think about a certain car and then all of a sudden, everywhere you drive, you see that car. Everywhere you go. For me right now, I've been thinking about Teslas a lot recently. And they're everywhere now. I was driving along today to go and sell the lens that I was selling, and the entire drive out there, I swear to you, there was a Tesla to my right, a Tesla in front of me, and a Tesla behind me. And sure, that would have happened regardless of the goal, but I don't think my brain would have noticed that unless I was thinking about that. So keeping that in mind, it can show you how powerful simply writing down your goals can be every single day. Because if you're writing down your goals every single day, then your brain's going to start noticing. Your brain doesn't realize that's a goal. If you write it in a way that represents it like you have this, not you want this, your brain's not going to recognize that that's something that you don't have, because, your brain doesn't know that you live in, your brain doesn't know that you haven't achieved a certain financial goal or a certain business goal or a certain whatever goal or health goal. Your brain just knows that you are thinking about that thing. So all of a sudden, if you start thinking about that thing a lot, if you start writing it down every single day, if you start reminding yourself of it, then suddenly your brain's going to start recognizing patterns. It's going to start recognizing opportunities, and those things are going to start opening themselves up for you. If you think about $1 million, and let's be super vain here, if you think about $1 million and you think about that every single day and you write it down every single day as if you have it, all of a sudden your brain's going to start recognizing opportunities for you to make money. Those things are going to start becoming more obvious to you, because our brain power is expensive. Like, using our brain for certain things is expensive. And this, I can't remember the science behind it, but apparently, like, from memory, from reading something when I was very young, I remember I was fascinated by this when I was in school. I read that apparently the reason for this is you only notice 5% of your surroundings and everything. You only notice 5% of that in total. And please don't butcher me if I'm wrong, because I'm probably wrong, but essentially I'm trying to regurgitate something I read 10 years ago. Apparently it only notices 5% of your surroundings and actually pays attention to even less, because it doesn't have the power to concentrate on everything all at once. So by giving yourself the direction, you're going to start noticing those things. You're going to start noticing opportunities too. Again, I'm going to say it again. I do not believe in the magic behind manifestation. I don't. Manifestation without action is delusion. I am a strong believer in that. But by giving yourself that direction, your brain is going to see what it's aiming at. And I think that's a massive, massive, massive opportunity for you. So that's been on my mind a lot this week, because one, I've started writing down my goals every single day because of this, and two, I've just, I just didn't really believe in goal setting beyond the motivation that it gives you until this week. And I was like, okay, well, maybe there's something behind this. So I want to encourage all of you, if you are, because what's scared me the most about it is even with a career that you're excited about, even with a business that you're enjoying, even maybe it's a fitness related goals, even with lots of motivation around those goals. Again, perfect example. Have you ever noticed how much better you train, how much better things are when you're actually training for a competition? It's like a lot of you who, if any of my listeners were rowers, do you remember how much fitter you were, or how much more mentally strong you were just because you were actually competing in a competition? And now you jump on the rowing machine and you can barely do it. I'm fitter than I was when I was rowing in high school right now, yet it is still way too difficult for me to get through even 20 minutes on the rowing machine. And that's because my brain was using the energy that it gains from that goal, that end goal, to drive the body. And it's so scary to think that even if you do have, like, 95% of the population doesn't have, wow, I'm making a sweeping generalization here, but let's say 80% of the population doesn't have a really powerful goal in mind. They don't have something that they're really striving towards. A lot of people, and I was the exact same when I was PTing. It's like I didn't think of anything beyond the next week. All I cared about was getting to the weekend and not burning through all my cash from my last paycheck and getting to the next paycheck. So 80% of the population is in that position. Like, what's terrifying is even the people who have strong, like they enjoy their work and they're in a good business position, and they may be creatives or photographers or filmmakers or whatever it is in that career. Even the people who are in that, if you don't have powerful goals related to that, if you don't have something that's driving you in a certain direction, you can still become stagnant or lost within something that you actually enjoy purely because you don't have those goals set in place. Like for me, for example, I think something that I've struggled with over the last few years is, and this comes from a huge insecurity of mine, is running out of money. That's been something that I've always been terrified of, and it probably comes from, I won't go into too much detail, but my family, essentially, we were in a position where that happened to us, and that has sort of put me into this mentality ever since I was about 17, where one of my biggest fears is personally running out of money. Like getting to zero and not knowing what to do and having to lean on someone else. And I think that's stupid, and I've been trying to figure out how to sort that out. But from that insecurity, it's essentially led to a situation where, and it makes sense now, where I would say yes to everything and not shape my career. I wasn't trying to, drive my career in a certain direction. All I was concerned about was saying yes to everything and saying yes to the biggest opportunities for me, and occasionally in my mind, I was still thinking, because it's an insecurity, so it's something that often happens subconsciously. In my mind, I was always thinking like, okay, I need to concentrate on, eventually let's try and get more tourism work. Let's try and do more on YouTube. Let's try and really focus on, starting a podcast and getting my website better, and maybe some online product, like an online course or something like that. Let's really try and focus on that side of my business. But in the back of my mind, subconsciously, all I was really concerned about and all my brain was thinking about was running out of money. So as soon as I was doing anything where it wasn't helping get to that goal, it wasn't helping relieve that stress, then it didn't carry the same amount of motivation. So even though I really enjoy personal projects more, even though I really enjoy the travel aspect of it, or even though I really enjoy this sort of thing, before I sorted out that insecurity, before I really figured out what was going on there and addressed that, it was, and I have to be honest with you, I actually enjoyed the work that brought me that goal more, or found it easier than I did with my own personal projects. And that was purely because of that goal in mind, the dopamine that comes from relieving that stress. And that's money in general. Like whenever you get paid, I'm sure all of you have the same experience. You have that dopamine hit, but that was to the nth degree because that goal was all my brain was focused on is not running out of money. Hey, Tom, that goal over there, that video that you're making for that client, this has to wait because that's going to make you money, and that's going to stop that stress that's in the back of your mind right now. So that really scares me, because that came along because I didn't have a goal that was bigger than that anxiety or bigger than that insecurity. So that was driving all of my business choices without me even realizing. In my mind, I was thinking, hey, I'm just doing this so I can, financially support the goals in my future. I'm just doing this so I can get to that point eventually. When in reality, all I needed to do was decide. All I needed to do was focus more of my. I didn't need to be making the money that I was making. All I needed to do was make enough money to support me to do this. But in the back of my mind, all I was thinking was, "Nah, it's not enough. That needs to go. That needs to go. We need to keep doing this. We need to keep doing this." And that was subconscious, because all of my goals around business, everything that I focused on was focused around this. Whereas now, again, I'm going to make a whole episode about insecurities, because none of this would have happened if I didn't sort that out, if I didn't address that, if I didn't actually consider that and try to figure it out. Because that is the most important thing that I'm going to preface here, is if you do have insecurities around anything that's stopping you from doing, like if you have insecurities around, people judging you, if you have insecurities around whatever, for me, for example, insecurities around money, insecurities around fear relating to money, then you can't really, it's just going to become accentuated when things get stressful. Or, for example, the judgment one, you're going to get negative comments. You are going to get negative comments. It's always going to happen. So you need to address that before you can start focusing on doing this and doing it successfully. So as a preface to this, try to address that insecurity, but set yourself a goal to take your attention away from that and get hyper-focused. Give yourself a strong why. Give yourself a strong reason as to why you're doing this. If you wake up every morning, and even if you don't know exactly, you don't have a very detailed and tangible goal in mind, like, for example, a huge goal of mine is to get to a certain milestone on YouTube within the next 2 years. That's a massive goal of mine right now. It's pretty much number 1 or 2 on my list at the moment. That is a huge goal in my mind, and that's very tangible. That's measurable. It's tangible. Have any of you heard about this? I think it's called Strong. Is it Strong? Strong? I think it's Strong, the goal setting principle. It's like the Strong principle. I think, I could be wrong. I learned this when I was studying PE back when I was doing PT, because they used to tell you to give your clients strong goals. Yeah, strong goals. Yeah, I think I'm correct here. But one of them is tangible, measurable, whatever. I think I'm getting the acronym wrong, but please don't butcher me. If any of you know it, you know what I'm talking about. But essentially, there's principles around creating good goals. And they have to be tangible, they have to be measurable, they have to be attainable. Like, those are all the things that need to be involved in a powerful goal, because that's what's going to help you actually achieve that goal. Obviously, you want to be setting big goals, because you don't want to set yourself goals that you're going to hit in 6 months' time and then be like, oh, well, what do I do now? You want to set yourself goals that are really going to drive you long term, because it's the process getting you there that's going to be more important than the actual goal. But you also want to set yourself goals that you can hit 6 months from now, or you can hit 2 weeks from now. Oh, hell, set yourself a goal that you can hit by the end of today. That's going to be good for you, because you do that every day. Do that for 3 years. Boom. You gotten somewhere. But I think it's super important to do that, because that's going to direct you in a direction that's going to help you. I've completely lost my train of thought. I'm really struggling with that tonight, aren't I? Losing my train of thought. But anyway, to round this out, because I didn't want to let this whole episode be about goal setting, I actually wanted the goal setting part to be the intro to this episode. I think it's incredibly valuable to sit down and set your goals and then write them down every single day and remind yourself why those things are important. Set yourself a strong why and give yourself something that's going to be more powerful than the money you might attain from it, going to be more powerful than any of the accolades you might attain from it, going to be more powerful than the negative things you get from it. If you're getting negative comments and it's whacking you at the knees and knocking your ass out from underneath you, then there's a good chance that you're not doing this for a strong enough reason. You're doing this and it's fragile to you, or you have a deep-rooted insecurity around negative comments and you need to address that. But I think that if you have a strong why, it's going to outweigh those negative comments. It's going to outweigh those situations that would normally lead you to stop, would normally lead you to rethink everything, would normally lead you to struggle, essentially. So, homework. I love saying homework. It's kind of like a throwback to, or a spit in the face of all my teachers when they used to give us homework and I used to hate it. I hope you guys don't hate my homework as much as the teachers. But homework for everyone who's listening to this podcast is if you don't know what you want to do, if you don't have a clear direction right now, first of all, sit down with a piece of paper and I want you to write down everything that you're good at, everything that you really enjoy. Find the crossovers between those two things, because if you combine something that you're really good at, because you can be really good at something and hate it. For example, I was fairly decent at cricket when I was younger. I hated it. I hated cricket. There was nothing I wanted to do less. There was like a point where my parents were like, yeah, you should really, consider doing, like, I remember there was once I got picked for the junior Victorian team, and I purposely played like shit so I wouldn't get selected and I wouldn't need to go on the tour that they were going to be going on. And the coach knew, my parents knew that I completely threw in the towel with the game, but I hated it so much that I had no other choice. My parents really wanted me to do it, the coaches really wanted me to do it, and I had no other choice but to purposely play like shit so they wouldn't pick me. There's points where you're going to be good at something but you really don't enjoy it, so find those crossovers where it's something you're really good at and something you really enjoy, and then reverse engineer how you can start to make that part of your life, if it's a potential career or just more part of your life, if it can be a side hustle or just something you do more of to make you happier, because at the end of the day that's important too, is just being happy. So set yourself that goal and reverse engineer it. And when I say reverse engineer, find what you want to achieve with that activity or that thing or that creative career, whatever it is. For me, for example, let's give me as the example. When I first started out, I saw someone like Peter McKinnon or the People Traveling or Sam Colders or whatever. I saw those people as the outlandish, crazy future goal. And I figured out that, okay, I've got to reverse engineer this. How can I need to start a YouTube channel. I need to start an Instagram page. I need to start posting this type of content. It's very easy to reverse engineer your goals and then figure out like smaller, like I said, big goal, achievable goal. So you can hit it every day or hit it every week or hit it every 6 months or every year or whatever. So do that if you're sort of don't really know what you're doing. And if you do know what you're doing, you are in a position where you are in a job that you enjoy, or you're doing something as a side hustle you enjoy, or maybe you're out of a job right now, but you're in a position where you're able to spend more time doing something that you actually enjoy, but you're feeling a little bit like directionless. Again, set yourself some actual, real, tangible goals, both related to the results of your work and related to what you will become out of your work. Because I think that's important too, is like setting goals. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with, and I think there was something that I saw on Mike, and he won't mind me saying this because I think he's said it in a YouTube video or an Instagram story or whatever. He has a photo of a Porsche up on his wall in his editing room, and it says, "How bad do you want this? Make that video." And I think that's huge. That is massively powerful for him, because every time he sees that, and he's a car person, there's nothing wrong with wanting a car. I think there's this negative stigma around being a materialistic person. If you find pure joy and happiness like he does out of a car, then there is nothing wrong with setting your goals around cars or buying a house or buying a watch or doing something like that, but make sure that's not your only goal. So one of the powerful things for me is why I brought Teslas up. I would love to own a Tesla one day. So that's one of my goals. And then I have goals around the person that I want to be. Maybe the level in my career. I have a goal of I want to direct or shoot a Netflix documentary one day. And a documentary that gets sold to Netflix. That's a goal that I have that's a little bit more complex and requires some moving parts, but it's tangible still. And then I have goals around wanting to be a certain type of person, do all that sort of stuff. And then I have the really materialistic goal of I want to buy a Tesla one day. And I think both of those are just as powerful because they can both lead you in the direction that you want to go in. So if you are either of those type of people, homework for tonight is get yourself a piece of paper, get yourself a journal or whatever you want to do. Don't do it in the notes on your phone. Actually write it down. It's going to help you way more if you actually write it down and set yourself some goals. It will really, really help you out. I promise you. So that was originally what I wanted to talk to as the opening for this episode. So, so I think we're now 40 to 50 minutes in and we're still talking about that. But I want to just quickly touch on, before we finish, something that's actually sparked. It is relevant to this because it has sparked from this. And that's fear and moving fast. And I'm going to make an entire video on this topic alone because I think it is really, really powerful. I don't think that people move quick enough on ideas. I really don't think that people, and myself included, myself certainly included, one of the biggest things that I have noticed in my own creativity, in my own career, is the longer that an idea stays in my notebook, the less likely it's going to be created. The longer that an idea stays in the I'm going to make a video about it stage, the less likely it's going to get created. Because after all, the ideas that actually get made, and of course, it's called, I think it's called the back pocket. What's it called? It's in directing, in filmmaking. I think it's called the back pocket idea. And it's essentially every filmmaker has like the idea that's real and can be made now. And everyone has a back pocket idea that if the budget somehow magically, I've got an idea for a documentary I want to shoot, but right now I don't have the time, I don't have the budget, I don't have the team, I don't have anything around me that's going to help me shoot that. So it's my back pocket idea. It's my idea if someone comes to me, or if eventually sometime down the line I have the time or the stars align or whatever. That's my back pocket idea. So everyone has those, and those are excluded from this idea. But essentially YouTube videos, podcasts, whatever it is, Instagram posts, whatever it is, creatively or professionally or whatever industry you're in, people don't move fast enough on ideas, and it is the easiest way to describe it is the longer that a YouTube video idea stays in my notes on my phone, the less likely it's going to be made. Literally down to I can time it. If a video stays in there for more than 3 weeks, it's never getting made. Because new ideas come to mind, those get made first, new ideas come to mind and push those ideas further and further away, and they're not going to get made. People do not move fast enough on ideas. They do not move fast enough on ideas. And I've been so terrible with this in the past. I have so many ideas that I want to make. I have so many ideas that I can make. There are so many ideas where all I need to do is sit down and record, sit down and script, sit down and do something, but they don't get made because I'm lazy. Essentially, I'm lazy. I don't move fast enough on these ideas. And I think this is huge because I've combined this with the motivation principle. You all know the lie, the common lie, and I've said this on the podcast before, but you all know it, where motivation, quality comes from quantity, and motivation comes after action. It doesn't come around the other way around. It doesn't go the other way around. You're only going to achieve quality content, and this is why I love that there are people out there like the Ben TKs of the world, the Sam Colders of the world. Those people, I think they're fantastic creators, but people see, the fact that they only post once a month, they only post whatever, and they're like, yeah, you can succeed from that. It's like, no, because those people made thousands of videos, they put in thousands and thousands of hours, and then started posting one insane quality video a month. They didn't jump straight into just posting one video a month. That's stupid. They just did their 10,000 hours before they got to the point where they were posting on YouTube or wherever they're posting once a month. And I think there's so many people that see that and they go, okay, well, I need to put everything into this idea. And all that does is slows people down and stops people from moving on ideas quickly. You need to move on your ideas quickly, because the most important thing you can do, especially as a creator, there was a study done, and I don't know if it was a study or an accidental study, but essentially there's a school for music in France, Germany. Can't remember where the school for music is, but it said that they take people no older than 8 years old into this school. They do not take people any older than 8 years old, because they found that the people who joined at 4 far outweighed the people that were successful joined at 5, and so on and so forth. It was exponential after that point, the likelihood of their success. And what it came down to was the fact that the people who joined this school at 4 years old, the music school, by the time they got to 15 years old, they had clocked 20,000 hours of their particular instrument. They had done a tremendous amount of work in their instrument, that they were essentially some of the best players on the planet by the time they were 15 years old. And there was a direct correlation between the fact that the later you join, the slower it is to get to 10,000 hours, and the less likely you're going to be professional by a certain age or be a professional. So what I'm trying to say is, like, your 10,000 hours is only going to be achieved by moving quickly on ideas and creating more often. So try to combine that with, and what I've done recently is I've combined that with the motivation principle by just doing something as soon as an idea comes to mind. So as soon as an idea comes to mind, and it has to be more than writing down the idea, because that's something that I've done as a little bit of a scapegoat for actually doing something. Even if it's just fleshing out the idea. For me, what I've done is I use my voice memos on my phone to just talk about the idea, or I use my journal to write down a script or a draft or whatever of the idea. Actually do something immediately as soon as that idea comes to mind. And obviously, with exception, if you're in bed late at night, and I do this actually a lot, so screw that. Yes, if you are laying in bed early and late at night and an idea comes to mind, get up and write about it. But what I've been doing is I've been using the voice memos on my phone. I've been writing scripts. I've been doing whatever to take action on that idea as soon as the conception of that idea comes to mind. Because the faster you can take action, the more likely that's going to be a video that actually gets made, but then also the quicker that motivation can catch up on that idea. It comes back to the blank page. An idea is only slightly easier than a blank page, because once you have an idea, yes, you don't have a blank page anymore, but then you have a secondary blank page of an empty idea. You have an empty idea. You have a page with a prompt. It's essentially the same thing as when you showed up to the English exam and they had a essay prompt. That's just as difficult as showing up and saying, write whatever. Write whatever you want. We don't care. That's essentially the same thing. So for me, I've realized that writing down the ideas in my notes is not good enough. It's not good enough because all I've said is literally to the date. If it's in there for a week, I've got to have to move fast. If it's in there for 2 weeks, unlikely it's going to be made. If it's in there for 3 weeks, you might as well delete it and forget about that idea altogether and come back to it when it comes to your mind again, because it's never getting made. So the general gist of this is move really, really quickly on your ideas. Move really quickly on your ideas, and some actionable steps that you can take is figure out the easiest part of that activity. For me, it's script writing. I find script writing actually very, very easy because it's essentially taking the thoughts that are already in my mind and just putting them out on paper or putting them onto a computer or whatever. Because when an idea comes to mind, there's already inspiration flowing in that idea. There's already things moving. The gears are already turning. You just need to get it out. So for me, script writing is the easiest part of that. For some people, actually recording, like for example, my videos just aren't vlog style. I'm really bad at telling a story through a vlog. But one of the things that has helped me out a lot recently is just to start recording. For example, the microphone video that I made. The only reason I recorded that whole sequence of, organizing my chords and all that sort of stuff, the only reason I actually filmed that is because I knew that by the time I started filming that, then it would be far easier for me to commit to making the rest of the video. That video could have very easily not included that intro part, but I knew that that intro was going to get me moving to the rest of the video. So for some people, that might actually be picking up your camera and recording. For other industries, for musicians, it might be just humming the melody into a microphone as soon as the melody comes to mind. Writing down lyrics, singing lyrics into a microphone, whatever it is that you can immediately do as soon as that idea comes to mind, flesh it out and get it done and start. Because in all likelihood, if an idea comes to me and I've got a couple hours free of work, there's a good chance that I'll probably make that video if I start writing the script. If I start writing the script, there's a good chance that I'll get to the end of the script and I'll go, screw it, let's make it. Turn on the camera, record it, have it edited in the next 2 or 3 days, and boom, I've got myself a video. But if I write down that idea, put it in my notes and forget about it, the likelihood of it actually becoming a video exponentially decreases day on day on day as soon as it's in my notes. So I cannot stress this enough. I do not think people move fast enough on ideas. I genuinely do not think people move fast enough on ideas at all. I think it's something that a lot of people, and myself included, could really improve upon, is just moving fast on ideas. And it's why I've decided to make this podcast. I'm very strict with when I record this podcast. I record between 4 and 7 p.m. on Sundays, and then I edit it on the same night. And the reason why I do that is I want to get better at that muscle of having to start something when I say I have to start it. I don't really think about this podcast until about 2 p.m. on Sundays. So what that's done is meant that I'm going from thinking about the podcast, thinking about the idea I want to talk about, writing a few notes on my phone and getting into it. And what that's doing is training that muscle, because that is a muscle, that action muscle, that muscle of doing something. You're training that muscle to enjoy the results that you're getting from that. I could go into this entirely. It's the whole idea of retraining your mind to, rather than working off the dopamine of your phone notifications, rather than working off the dopamine of, all the things that aren't helping you out, like playing PlayStation and all that sort of stuff, and food and whatever it is, training your mind to work off the dopamine of the things that are actually bringing you value. Train your mind to work off the dopamine of getting up and exercising. Training your mind to work off the dopamine of working, getting your mind to train off for me, gamifying everything is a massive one. And that's actually going to bring me to what I was going to close this episode out at. I'm sorry to steal your thunder, Kyle, if you're listening to this, at Meshna during our podcast. And I feel I wanted to share it in the podcast, but I cannot resist it. This has been such a game changer for me. I have a very addictive personality. Thankfully, my values outweigh my addictive personality, so I've never become addicted, with exceptions. I've had a few stints in my life where I've become addicted to certain things that probably weren't super healthy, and gone the extreme with certain things to the point where it's no longer healthy. For me, exercise and nutrition was a point. There was a point in my life where it really wasn't healthy, the extent that I was taking it to, and that's because of my addictive personality. But one of the things that I can utilize with an addictive personality is that my brain enjoys gamifying things. My brain really enjoys quantifying, measuring, and gamifying things. If I can set myself little achievements to hit throughout the day, then that's really, really going to help me out. For example, my running, one of the main reasons I enjoy my running so much is the app that I use. One of the reasons why I enjoy it so much is because I've got it in my headphones. It tells me every 500 meters how fast I'm going compared to my last run, and it turns it into a game, because rather than just going out for a run aimlessly, I'm trying to beat that personal best. And that has been massive for me because it gamifies the exercise. It turns it into a game. And one of the things I've really, really struggled with is being distracted on my phone. My screen time hours are ridiculous. Obviously, with the exception of, there's a lot of hours in the day where I'm, say, listening to an audiobook and the screen is just on without me even realizing, and that takes up a lot of time. But even with that included, my screen time is ridiculous. So that has been something I've recently really been trying to work on, is getting better at not spending as much time in front of a screen, and obviously without work, as the exception of work. But there's so many hours in the day where, for no reason, I'll pick up my phone as I'm working and I'll just scroll through Instagram for half an hour, or I'll just go on YouTube and I'll do these things aimlessly without even thinking. And I've tried turning off my phone, for example, was one that I tried last week. It was really good, but that was kind of like pure discipline. So the drain of constantly like having to focus on, no, you don't need to turn your phone back on yet, was really just didn't work with my brain. It worked for a little bit. It just didn't, I couldn't keep up the routine of doing it. So one of the things that Kyle recommended to me was an app called Forest. Now this is a paid app. It's about $3.20. So please, I encourage all of you to buy it. $3.20 on the App Store, so Australian dollars, whatever that is in American, even cheaper if you're American. I'm pretty sure anything that's whatever in Australia, even with the exchange rate, is always way cheaper in America, so it's probably closer to 99 cents over there. But it's essentially an app where you have your phone open and you open the app and you can set it to be like deep focus mode and not deep focus. Just turn on deep focus mode because it's going to make you way more attentive. And what it does is every single time you set a timer, and you can set the timer up to 2 hours at a time because obviously, whatever. So 2 hours at a time. And as you set that timer, it plants a tree. And it plants a tree in your forest that you've been building up over however long you've been using the app for. Whatever statistic you've got set, you can set it to just daily forest, weekly forest, monthly, whatever. And every single time that you close the app, tree dies. So it stops your progress, and that puts a dead tree into your forest. If you stay for the entire duration that you had the goal to set, then you get a new tree in your forest, nice, healthy tree, and you get points to upgrade your trees and do all that sort of stuff. And the longer you do, the cooler the tree. So if you go for half an hour, it's just a normal looking tree. If you go for 2 hours, it's a beautiful looking tree. It's cool. It's different. It's gamifying staying off your phone, essentially. And it has been a game changer for me, because suddenly, rather than thinking, okay, I spent less time on my phone today, I'm thinking, oh, the app says I had 300 minutes of focused attention today, where the app was showing that I wasn't using anything other than that app. And that has completely changed the way I'm working, because every single time I sit down to work, I'm setting a certain time. And it doesn't need to be a massive amount. Like, for example, this morning, I woke up at 9:30. I had to be somewhere at 11. I knew I had about an hour of work, give or take, because I travel time and then going downstairs and showering and coffee and all that sort of stuff. So I set myself 40 minutes in the morning, and I probably wouldn't have gotten a decent amount of work done in that time normally, because I probably would have been distracted by my phone for a decent chunk of that. But because of that app, boom, I got a decent amount of work done. And suddenly I'm chasing goals of, okay, I got 200 minutes yesterday. Let's try and get 400 minutes today. Let's try and get 450. Let's try and get 460, 470, 500 minutes. It's an amazing way to regain your focus, at least in my mind. If you're anything like me and you enjoy gamifying things, your brain works on that level of, being able to actually count and quantify and do all that sort of stuff, then this is going to be huge for you. So, Forest, I'm going to be sending you guys a invoice for this. I'm joking. I don't think anyone will listen, and I also don't think this will bring any sort of value, but I have actually gotten a few messages from you guys saying that you've bought The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. So, one, that's awesome to see. If you download this app, send me a message showing me, one, your forest and you using it, because I would actually love to see you do it, because I think that our phones are such a distracting thing that you don't even notice is taking over your entire life. So if you are thinking about, if you are someone who's like really ashamed of their screen time hours, if it's something that you look at and you're like, oh, I really don't want to show anyone that is really embarrassing, then download this app. It's called Forest in the App Store. Really easy to find. I might leave a link in the description for those of you listening on YouTube. Sorry, in Spotify, I can't leave links, but yeah. That's been a good episode. I've actually really enjoyed today's conversation. That'll be episode 6. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I'm going to ramble on this once again, because I've said it every single week. And once again, I would appreciate it massively if you could. The number one thing you can all do to help me out more than anything else right now is share this podcast with a friend. I would really appreciate the reviews. And if you are feeling generous, if you could head over to iTunes and give me a honest review, but if you're feeling generous, a 5-star review over on iTunes. That really does help me out and get me put in front of people on iTunes. But the number one thing that you can do to help me out right now is share the podcast with a friend. Share the podcast with someone you know, someone who might appreciate it. Maybe there's someone out there that, I don't know, you really enjoy this content and you think that they would enjoy this content, or maybe they just have told you that they're bored and thinking of podcasts. Or how many times my friends ask me all the time, have I got any podcast recommendations for them? Maybe just drop my podcast in there next time you get asked for any podcast recommendations. But as always, that is entirely up to you, and I'll see you guys next time.